All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studios reminding you that you can get this podcast on all your podcast platforms by just searching Tennis Channel Inside In. We have day one of the 2024 Wimbledon Championships. Exciting times to say the least. We're ready to start the year's third major, the only one on the grass. And I'm joined now by the first time on this show, a long time coming. If you're on social media and you're a fan of tennis, you should be following this person. Simply from the fact that I think she watches the most tennis of anyone that I know or come in contact with. I actually first came in touch with this person when I erroneously thought that Jimmy Butler was the answer to the person that watched the most tennis, and I was sadly mistaken. Anastasia Folorunso, thank you so much for joining this show. One of my favorite follows on tennis Twitter and a knowledgeable source of the game. Thanks for joining the podcast. This should be fun.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a big fan of ESPN's multicast. I'm like 4 screens, that's how I'm watching tennis. I mean, that's not really how I watch most of the tennis matches, but I do watch a lot of tennis.
Yeah, you certainly do. And I should also point out, Anastasia hosts the Ground Pass podcast with Nick Carter. They do tremendous stuff. They're also getting to these events. Before we dive into Wimbledon, I just wanted to kind of ask you, the background story. I know you work in film as well. You're an assistant director and you work on a lot of different projects. I guess the simple question is, how do you find the time to balance this passion for tennis? And what took you to a more active role in the game in the last couple of years?
Funny enough, I think it was last year's US Open. So if you're in tune with what's been happening in the entertainment industry, we had a big strike last year. So I live in New York. I go to the US Open every year, and I had the time and I thought, what happens if I go to the US Open every single day? It was just, I had nothing else to do. I love tennis, so I tried to do it. And it was going to the tournament every single day. I realized how many people go to the US Open and have no idea of anything. And what also hit me with it is that there's a lot of betting going on. So there's a lot of sports betting, and you see all these guys and they're betting and they're like, well, that guy's number 4 and then that guy's number 14. And yeah, the number 4 guy is going to win. And tennis isn't that. Like, there's so much to it. The number 14, the number 217 guy could win sometimes, Yeah. So it was trying to give people more information about what tennis is about and getting them to more tournaments so they could enjoy the game.
Yeah, that's not hyperbole. You were at every single match, just about every session. No, it was fun to see, and it's also good with what you do on the podcast and how you cover the game and watch the game, Anastasia, the ability to tell the story of that number 70 player, that number 100 player, how a match for them could be as big, if not bigger, than a win for some of the top players. And when you go to a major like Wimbledon, today was a great example. There's countless matches all across the grounds. It's really the best time for tennis junkies. And you have to pick and choose what to go and who to see. So there is some strategy there as well.
No, there really is strategy, but I'm such a proponent of, our podcast is called Ground Pass because that's the entry level ticket. But with that ticket, you can get to see so many great matches and be part of so many great stories. I still remember some really great matches on the outside courts with the crowds just going crazy. And those are my favorite moments of the US Open and tournament. So, yeah.
So a day like today, for example, and we'll get into the recap and everything, but if you were going to Wimbledon, if this was day one of the US Open, if you were in London going to this, is this something you're studying for the couple days up? You're looking at the schedule, the courts. Do you have to have a game plan when you go to day 1 or day 2 of a major?
You do. You have to go with a plan because there's so many matches and you can get very crazy and bogged down with I need to see that. I need to see that. I need to see that. So you definitely have to go in with a plan. The day before, I always make a schedule of what matches I want to see, but you also have to leave room for, you're going to hear cheers from 2 courts away and you're going to be like, wait, what's going on over there? So you have to leave a little bit of room too to wander and explore.
It's like leaving room for dessert. I love it. And also,
always.
It's really crazy. There's a lot of things that make tennis unique and special, but also just so different. And one of them is not knowing when matches are going to start, the length of matches. So you can have the perfect plan and it's just not going to work. But
no, totally. Yeah.
Crazy to think about that as we segue here into Wimbledon 2024. I wrote down a couple keywords going into the event and then through day one. And, there is more, there's always drama in tennis, Anastasia, but there's also unpredictability. I do feel like both tours, this is the tournament where there's going to be, and it's so strange to say because we're used to growing up with Djokovic, Federer, Serena, just stalwarts, always won here. But I was looking at the top of both fields, the top contenders, and that word unpredictability just kept coming back. I think this tournament might have as much variance as any of the majors going forward.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how it's changed. I started off as a fan of Serena and Venus, and that definitely followed the big three. And to think that in this tournament we're looking at Andy Murray's last one, and Nadal and Roger are not here, and then you're looking who's going to win. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the withdrawals that happened today, and there's so much up in the air. Unpredictability is the name of the game of day one at Wimbledon.
Yeah, first Wimbledon without Venus or Serena since I think '96. So we're really dialing it back there. The withdrawals, and there's a couple ways to look at it. One, the biggest name's not in it. Unfortunately, injuries do happen. Sabalenka is the biggest one. She went into this morning as the Wimbledon women's favorite. She is not playing. Along with Azarenka, along with Alexandrova, we'll wait as we record this about Murray. His match set to take place Tuesday, still figuring out if he's going to play. On the one hand, it's the names, and I want to get to them first. Sabalenka not playing is just gutting because I always felt like, regardless of what happened going into a tournament, with what's going on in her headspace, she's been the most consistent of anyone, Iga included, at majors, just churning out results. So for her not to have a crack at this is really a tough blow and a tough break for someone that's always just been so money in these majors.
Yeah, and I think we were looking back because she had the first sign of this injury in Berlin, and everyone was talking about how she's never withdrawn. She's never retired a match before. So she's such a consistent force, at least for the last few years, that it is strange not having her. I mean, so many people picked her to win. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that section of the draw.
You had Rybakina coming in with, not coming really in necessarily, but is it an injury or bitten, or should say snake bitten in a lot of ways this year? This is clearly Iga's worst surface. Jabor's trying to find that Wimbledon magic again, but the point being it was open for her. So that's why this one stings a lot. And, in the case of somebody like Victoria Azarenka, you don't know how many chances you're going to have left. So that's what I think when you get to your early to mid 30s at this point, you don't know how many Wimbledons are left on the docket for you.
No, you don't. You really, really don't. I don't think. I mean, you also don't know. You can't also plan this out. I think sort of a theme of this year too has been retirements and like how you're gonna. You never know what's gonna happen. I think Andy Murray would have loved a better sort of way to end his run at Wimbledon. And with Azarenka, you have no idea how much longer she has. So each tournament when you get to that level is so important.
Hollywood endings are great. Very unlikely in the real world. Just say, I know we all want it. Everyone wants to go out like Pete Sampras to the U.S. Open, but very, very unlikely because it's real life.
It's real life. We write it and then we rewrite it. So,
yeah. The other question I had for you, though, Anastasia, was the idea or the practice. And I'm not going to make any judgments. I want to hear you answer this first. But where are you with withdrawing after the draws come out, or in this case, waiting until the absolute last minute, giving your body the chance to see where it's at, and then withdrawing, as is Sabalenka's case. Now a lucky loser gets her spot in the draw. So where are you with that whole process, if there should be a rule change in general?
I can see it from both sides in the sense that if you withdraw, if you're injured, the likelihood of you playing is slim to none. Why not make room for people further down the draw who are trying to make it in for the first time? The Grand Slams are such a big deal for players. It's where they make the most money. It can be such a boost to a young player up and coming if they can get into the draw directly. So that part I understand. But these are athletes. These are professional athletes. They're reason of being is to win tournaments and play the sport they love. So I also see that part of it. And how do you tell someone like not to give it 117%, like take it to the limit? So it's tough for me to say, yeah, they should all just withdraw early and like make room for other people. They're professional athletes. It's tough to do that.
My first thought to this was, as is currently the rule, and I always go back to what's the rule state, what this is exactly what players are going to do, like you said, to give every ounce of themselves. There's nothing malicious. There's nothing malicious if Andy Murray decides not to play tomorrow because you know he wants to give everything to be out there. If you wanted to make a rule change, then you say, all right, after a certain point, you have to be in, or there might be some financial repercussions or whatnot. That could be done, but there is no rule that exists. And I'm always going to go back to it's within reason. These players are giving themselves a chance. Knowing you're hurt is one thing. Knowing that you absolutely can't play is one thing. But I don't think in any of these cases, especially Sabalenka, Azarenka, even Alexandrova, I don't think they knew anything about their form going in other than they wanted to give it a go. So it's unfortunate. And on that women's side, it bodes the question as we get into some of the results and some of the matches coming up. Who do you think is going to be pacing the field as this draw progresses? Because there's a lot of openings even already.
There's a lot of openings, and it's hard not to look at Coco Gauff and say, bottom half of the women's draw, like, there's so much opportunity there, and looking at her draw and the road forward to semis and finals, it's like it's hard not to look at her and automatically put her in that space. But you never know. I mean, we're going to talk about it, but some of the upsets today, you're sort of like, well, didn't see that coming.
I think that Coco Gauff, and I know it's overused a lot, but you have the background, so I'm going to use it here. It would be kind of cinema if Coco wins Wimbledon or goes deep after it's a 12-month bookend to the worst stretch of her life, like as a tennis player, the lowest point to make a run. And I actually think in a setting like this with some chaos, having her team around her, Brad Gilbert and company, they've really raised her floor a lot. And I think a lot of that is we talk about with good reason, right, with players, that they have to have a high ceiling, they have to be big match players. But sometimes just getting to the semis is all about how high your floor is. And if Coco can just avoid those days when the first serve goes away and the forehand spraying balls all over the court, there's no reason why. She's too tremendously talented, too tremendously athletic to at least get to the second week. And then she's in the stretch to win the whole thing.
Yeah. It's you don't want to call anything early, but it's looking good, really good. Couldn't write it. So
yeah, she looks very comfortable in her win against Caroline Dolehide today. Other matches that kind of want to get to as we continue on here with Anastasia Folorunso here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Upsets, and there was a few already. We saw Qinwen Zhang go out early. Pliskova to Diana Schneider, which wasn't the biggest upset, had a match point, was able to, or blew a match point, I should say. Schneider was still able to win that match, which leaves that section, the highest seed left there, Jasmine Paolini, who, by the way, won her first Wimbledon match today. So that's what it's looking like right now.
She is having quite the season. I was driving in today and I thought, Jasmine Paolini got to the finals of Roland Garros. Like, it just popped into my head. She's having such a great season. She's won her first match. She's the highest seed now in her section. Again, the door's opening for someone like her to make big moves this tournament.
Yeah, big win for her. Also for Naomi Osaka, first win at the All England Club since 2018, and had to fight for it. I know we talk about whose surfaces match up with their game, and I don't think any true tennis junkie will say grass and Naomi is the perfect combination. But I loved what I saw from the fight because it was really, really brutal out there. Perry gave her a heck of a match, and Naomi had to dig deep to get there. So you like what you see there. And that road to maybe a fourth round with Coco Gauff could be a little intriguing.
Yes, totally. And I love the way Naomi's approaching her return to the tour this season. She's not looking at any surface. I think there was a quote somewhere where her coach was saying back in the day, they would look at hard courts and that's where they would focus on their, they would be like, okay, we could win some hard court Grand Slams. And now they're looking at all four of them and like, we could win all four Grand Slams. So I love the switch of mentality there, and how she's taking every surface seriously. She's now cracked by winning this match. She's now into the top 100. Just phenomenal so far for her.
There is something to be said. I'm going to quote one of my favorite sports movies here, Any Given Sunday, when Dennis Quaid's character said to Jamie Foxx, it's about how you handle the losses that determine your success. I'm really impressed with how she's bounced back from one of the most brutal defeats against Iga Swiatek, where she had her and didn't win, but is still just playing. She's playing through it. She's shown back up. It's very impressive. And I think that is going to go a long way for her. Maybe not this Wimbledon, but the North American hardcourt swing where she's right at home could be good. So I'm impressed by what I've seen. Also, we did miss one upset in my bad. I got to get to this one. Andreeva lost today to Brenda Fruitova. So the battle of 17-year-olds does not go to Mira Andreeva. Really, really strange result. Andreeva didn't have it. We know it's not the end of the world, but I'll let you comment on this one. It was maybe trappish. I think some people thought this could be a pitfall for her.
I kind of called this, actually. I called this loss, and I get it. I think this is actually what comes from when you discover a player like Brenda. I watched for the first time in Miami, and she was playing against Katie Boulter. I talked about this a little bit on Ground Pass, the podcast I co-host, and she was crushing the ball and was gonna win that match, and suffered a little bit of heat stroke in Miami. And I thought, who is this player? Brenda, must follow her. So when I saw her against Mira, I thought, ooh, that might be, a little bit of a hiccup. And then it turned out to be actually a really big hiccup in Mira Andreeva's run.
Yeah, that was Katie Boulter. I was watching that match as well, thinking, wow, she was giving her everything. Another point I just wanted to make, we know it's not the end of the world. Andreeva is still young, and this is just her second go round at majors. So no need to sound the alarm. But isn't it fascinating, Anastasia, how when you're the same age as someone, even a prodigy, there isn't quite that fear factor or worry. Like Brenda just looks at her as a peer more than anything.
Yeah, no, totally. Especially when you're that young. They're both 17-year-olds, teenagers going at it. I don't think Brenda came into that match with any sort of, trepidation. I think it was probably, not a hit and a giggle, because that it's a grand slam. It's a grand slam here, but I'm sure she came in thinking, this is my peer and I have a chance.
Certainly did. I also want to give a shout out to not that I was necessarily thrilled with the result, given how much I like the other player, but Seville beating Peyton Stearns, huge win, huge emotional reaction after. There isn't maybe a player that's worked harder to get back on the court and stay on the court than Daria Seville, Dasha, as she's known. So full marks to her. It's tough for Peyton Stearns to lose that match, but Daria Seville just out there playing well after some of the worst injury luck in tennis.
Yeah. I didn't catch that match, but Seville is someone I love watching. I love watching her on Kazakina's blog. She vlogs. She's always on it. But tough luck for Peyton Stearns. I love Peyton Stearns, and she has really great sort of attitude on court. So tough luck for her.
I think the Tom Hill partnership is going to go very well. It's a long-term approach. He's notorious for just slow and steady wins the race, and I think it will eventually, but no need to go crazy with that result. Other contenders that we didn't get to, I mean, obviously there's Iga on grass, and we'll see if she can put it together. I talked last week on this show, but Jessie Pegula is just sitting prime. I know the quarterfinal record isn't good at all, but there's opportunities for Jessie to make a run. And I just think the other part of this that we haven't really talked about is that she's been waiting for this tournament. She didn't come back and play clay. She was looking at Wimbledon. I think she's primed to do some real damage here.
Yeah, she won Berlin coming in. She's had some great matches on grass. I think she's primed for it. Coming back from injury, she's had time to sort of make plans for this tournament. I'm definitely looking at her for, especially as how the draws have fallen, I'm looking at her to make big moves this tournament.
The other names to look at too, Kazakina is a seed in a section without many there. It would be interesting if Kazakina and her serve made a deep run here, but stranger things have happened. Bianca Andreescu has got major championship success. She looked good. I'll throw her name out there. I'm going to let you add some too, but also Emma Navarro. I'm not going to not going to count her out just yet too. So any other names or players we should be watching based on today, or just thoughts going into the tournament?
Well, I just feel that this is so open for a lot of people. I think last year we haven't even said anything about Ons Jabeur yet and how she's doing coming into this. This is kind of, I think everyone's just waiting for Ons Jabeur to win Wimbledon. But at the same time, there are now so many names in the pot that can get there. We might be looking at a new Wimbledon champion this year, which is exciting. I love it when there's a little bit of chaos there in the draw.
I think with Jabeur, with how well she's played here, if she can find that magic, she could beat anyone. Should probably have a Wimbledon title by now. Rybakina's the other one, right? Because you see, she is the blueprint for this is what a Wimbledon champion looks like. But there's just been something off, and it's weird because her results when she's played has been good, but she just has some bad injury luck or health luck. So that's going to be fun to watch and fascinating to see. Before we switch to the men, any other matches you've got your eyes on? Matches that took place today or matches on deck for the next couple of days for the women?
Well, two that took place today that I think, Paula Badosa, who after actually your interview with her, I thought, wow, what can we expect from her this season with the back? She's out here winning a very good match against Mukova, and Emma Raducanu. She was sort of a recipient of a lucky loser sort of withdrawal situation. But it wasn't an easy match for her there in center court in the first set for sure. And then she ran away with it. But nice to see her just happy and smiling on court again. It looked like she was having a lot of fun out on court. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was good for her confidence. Obviously, they're going to rally around her. I would say that the Wimbledon crowd, maybe not the strongest in terms of general raucous noise reaction to rallying around her, but they have their favorite. She is clearly one of them. So we'll get to some matches tomorrow a little later on this podcast, but I want to switch to the men now and talk about some of the big stories, talking about who's playing and who might not be. But Novak Djokovic in this event is it's remarkable. I guess we should never count this guy out.
Never.
Not gonna buy in any of the conspiracy theories because Taylor Fritz did lay this blueprint a few years ago. But just to see him back out there, and again, I keep bringing this up, he wouldn't be out there if he didn't think he could win it. So this is going to be full systems go. Now, can he win it and will he is two different things, but Djokovic is on court and he's in it to win it.
Yeah, no. And for someone who is also taking the next big tournament coming up, the Olympics, very seriously, he wouldn't be out here if he didn't think he had a chance at Wimbledon. And you're right. Taylor Fritz totally laid out the blueprint for this comeback. But even with Novak, the age he is, it's still so mind-blowing how he has conquered fitness. He is so fit to come back after 3 weeks, is it, from surgery? If only I could. But it's really impressive to see, and he's in it to win it. And he has a pretty nice draw to get him there.
I think the draw, it's so funny how it's like a game of sliding doors, revolving doors. If Alcaraz doesn't lose that match to Jack Draper, then Djokovic is probably still the 3 seed and doesn't, now we have Alcaraz and Sinner on the same side of the draw. So that opportunity opens things up. And yeah, I think the first 3 matches, pretty straightforward if there's not any, setbacks from the injury. Then it would be Holger Rune. And Holger has been up and down. He's played Djokovic close. That's one where that's really the first full fitness test. Okay, how healthy is Novak? He's going to have to be fully healthy to beat Holger. But that's still like a week away, so he can round into form. And I'm with you. I think the draw sets up nicely.
Yeah, with this draw, he has, even with the sort of tougher players he gets later on, like you said, he can build up his fitness. He can build up his match fitness to get him there.
Well, by the time people listen to this, they will certainly already know what happened with Andy Murray. I hope we get to see him. I know there's nothing owed in competitive sports. And if you're Thomas Mahach, which he played against in Miami in that match, we know that he's out there to win and should not make any qualms about beating Andy Murray if that is the case. I just hope we get to see it as a fan and as someone that deserves doesn't mean what will happen, but he deserves that goodbye at the place in his homeland in the tournament he's won twice. So I just hope we get to see it.
Yeah, same. I mean, speaking about draws, like what's the luck he draws Thomas Mahach in the first round? But yeah, I think Andy has worked enough to make a decision when and where to play without question. So I really hope we get to see him not only play, but at least, he might not win, but at least put on a show,
I will to talk about not counting somebody out. I will never count Andy Murray out, especially on those courts. And it doesn't matter how dire the situation is. I'm going to always remember the fire with him. I know he's not retired officially yet, but that competitive fire, what he's willing to do to himself, even to play and compete and just get on the court, that's going to be my lasting image of Andy Murray.
Yeah, coming out of like the hip injury he had and going through all of that, everyone please go watch Resurfacing, that documentary. You watch that documentary and Andy Murray is going to fight to the death,
He's a trendsetter in competitive sports too. I've said this to some of my other friends, big hockey fans, but Patrick Kane in the NHL, he has that same surgery and he's playing well. So Andy Murray is a kind of a pioneer in how that went down too. Other things to discuss, straightforward business, mostly for the seeds today. Alcaraz starts his title defense with a straight set win. Sinner drops a set, so does Tommy Paul, but they both win. I guess the first thing too being, and it was the blueprint, Anastasia, of the big four, but there is a little bit of, I don't want to say rust, but easing into the tournament. And best of five, you kind of know that it's not always going to be straight set wins. We've seen Djokovic, we've even seen Federer lose sets here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going lower than 1 for Sinner losing a set or Paul losing a set going forward.
Oh yeah. I think first match of a best of a 5 tournament. Is it rust? Is it working into it? I'm not reading much into dropping a set on your way to winning a match at a Grand Slam. So with Sinner, Tommy, I think they're fine. I think it's okay. It's the first match of the tournament. Are we? What are your thoughts on our little Mark Lahal, who played against Carlos?
I think it reminded me of Dave Chappelle's hair and the Nutty Professor a little bit.
He is a character. I wasn't even.
That was my reaction. You know what though? I actually, all jokes aside, I was impressed with how he handled the moment because it's nerve-wracking. He might never get a chance again. I hope he does, and I hope he propels himself, a la what Jack Draper did when he got that chance, and now he's proven himself. But it's a lot. I mean, I can only imagine from the outside what it's like to have to go on center court and play that first match.
Yeah, no, as a qualifier, he is the lowest ranked qualifier in the tournament. And here he is center stage playing against Carlos Alcaraz, the defending champion. Some people would shrink. And he made it fun, in those first 2 sets. The shot making was great. He held his own. Yes, it was a straight set win for Carlos, but I don't think it was easy. I don't think he sort of like flew through it. So props to him for making it a show and, kind of living up to that center court billing.
Well, Sinner gets Berrettini next, so I think everyone had that circled for round 2 matches, which we'll get into at the end of this. But it's a step up. Berrettini winning a nice match as well, but have to be a little concerned. He was getting the back worked on, and Sinner's just at a point where he's so all around solid. This is one where I think best of 5. I don't know that I see it as close. I hope I'm wrong, but Sinner is just so complete as a tennis player now that I wonder what Berrettini's going to have in the tank for a long match, presumably.
Yeah, he has a day off, but that wasn't a great sign, getting that treatment in his match. Hoping it's just, little needs to be loosened a little bit, because if Berrettini is playing at all cylinders, he's good to go, and that will be a big challenge for Sinner. I just don't know if he has it in the tank. He's also making his way back from injury. So he did great at Stuttgart, but I think I don't know, Sinner is so solid right now, and just, will be a really, really tough match.
We got 4 players I want to group together: Frances Tiafoe, Alexander Bublik, Lloyd Harris, Jordan Thompson. What do those 4 have in common? They all came back 2 sets down today. The first 4. We were talking before we started. Don't change best of 5 at a major, especially this one.
Don't do it.
Great
No
drama. Matches don't even really last that long comparatively to other surfaces, but those 4 guys all come back, and starting with Frances, I wanted to bring this up because he comes back against Arnaldi, who's a heck of a player. I think you've seen him up close. You know what this guy is capable of. I hope for Frances's sake, this is like a spark that could ignite something. It's been a rough year for him, to say the least, given his standards. He thrives on emotion. He thrives on positive emotion, vibes, whatever you want to call it. So I hope going into the match against Borna Coric, this could be a spark that ignites something within.
Yeah, no, you really hope so, because he is someone who lives for the crowd and the energy. You see him at the US Open or during the US Swing, and he really lifts himself and his game when he's in front of those crowds. So he really needed a good win. And a win like this, actually, he's never come back from 2-0 down ever. This is the first time he's done it. So making that breakthrough here, I do hope is that little bit of something that he needs to sort of switch his season around.
He also was clearly the better player. I mean, obviously there's matches where that happens. Obviously there's winners and losers, but it wasn't much of a sweat. He won every set pretty good, pretty handily. So liked what I saw, didn't get down on himself. That was great. I mean, I would have never guessed Bublik would be on this list. I'll just be completely honest.
Okay. So,
right?
I mean, but it is Bublik. It is he's I don't know. He plays tennis because he feels like it and he likes it. He's someone who, if he loses in the first round, if he gets to the semis, I'm like, it's Bublik. It's what he does. So he's really a tough one to read. So I really wasn't surprised. I thought, oh wow, he might be gone in the first round, but then he pulls back.
He's also way smarter than people realize.
Yeah.
And I say that because, look, I like Mensik. I think he's one of the next blue chippers coming up. We'll see how far he goes. But Bublik obviously knew he had a chance in this match. This is a young kid who's never been there before. Let me stay in the fight. It's one thing to be down 2 sets to, I don't even want to say like Alcaraz, but a Tommy Paul or Taylor Fritz,
right,
where you're probably going home because those guys don't really blow those matches. But Bublik knew he had a shot if he just stayed engaged and had an opening and went right through it. So I'm giving him full credit for that. I'm also going to give credit to the other guys, Jordan Thompson and Lloyd Harris. Lloyd Harris had the point of the day, point of the tournament, point of the year on match point in the 5th tiebreak.
Point of the year. Let's go there. Let's do that. I love points like that. When a player is just like, I will not lose this point, and throws their entire body into winning the point. That's tennis. That's tennis. So point of the year, because you just knew he wanted it so bad. And then the celebration at the end, like just that relief, really, really, really great scenes.
Down 2 sets to love to Alex Michelsen, down 8-5 in the 5th set, super breaker, down match point, still wins.
Yeah.
It was great. And you love to see those stories again. It was just phenomenal stuff. Well, we're going to wrap up here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Still got a couple things to cover with Anastasia Folorunso here on the podcast. Day 1 Wimbledon Championships 2024. Other shout outs to give to day 1. How about Grass for Rude?
It's not just for golfing, guys. It's also for tennis.
The one player in the top 40, I think, that didn't do a lead-up tournament in the men's side on grass was Casper Ruud, who wasn't injured, I should say also. Non-injury related, just did not play. And yet he wins match 1. He gets Fabio Fognini round 2. Suddenly there's people thinking, look, this is a potential for at least something with Casper.
Yeah. I'm not the athlete. I'm not in his body. We don't know what he needs. I think Iga is someone on the women's side who didn't really play any grass court tournaments leading in. It is an Olympic year. They have a lot of stuff coming up. Maybe he just needed the time off. He does have the reputation, though, for just not really loving the grass court tournaments. But yeah, he, won his first match and has a good road to make it far if he keeps playing well.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to look at too, unfortunately, no weekend concert tour dates in London. So I don't know if that's motivation for him, but no, I like to see it. He's stepping out of his...
concentrates him with the tennis. If there's no weekend concert to attend, he might as well play the tennis.
Could be. The only match that did not finish today, we have a 2-1 lead for Bellucci over Ben Shelton going into set 4, outer court.
Let's talk about it.
That match. Now, let's talk about it, because you said before we started that you kind of had an inkling that this was possible. We'll see how it ends, but Ben Shelton was right for Bellucci to make a run at this match.
Yeah, Bellucci is someone I've been watching. I think he played Tiafoe at the French Open first round. Tiafoe won that in 5 sets. So that was a tough one. And Bellucci won his last qualifying match, which was a tough one against Goffin. He's a very interesting player. I mean, right now Italy is just pumping them out like it's pasta. Tennis players are just flowing out of Italy. He has a very big game, big serve, so very actually similar to Ben Shelton. So and Shelton really hasn't come alive, I feel, in the grass that like a lot of people thought he would. Like I think a lot of people just saw Ben Shelton's game and thought he's Wimbledon's for him. So yeah, it's an interesting pairing. Right now, Bellucci's leading by 2-1. They come back tomorrow. Maybe there's a reset from Shelton. We'll see.
Yeah, I always will be a fan of Ben Shelton, his game, what he brings to the sport, love it. Having said that, I don't really care how much of a freak athlete you are. Grass court tennis takes time and takes repetition, and he didn't have reps on this surface. So we should not be stunned that it's taking him some time to figure out how to play on this surface, because he just never did before. So I'm giving him some time to figure this out. I also do think, as you said, Bellucci was a dangerous opponent to draw. That's why the beauty or the curse of the draw is huge. You don't know. He could have eased into it, and that's where that's how it's actually really hard, Anastasia, to gauge your level. Because sometimes the draw can mislead you into some false confidence, and other times you're just getting brutal draws.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell the full story either.
No, ranking isn't everything, especially when it comes on the natural surfaces. They are some specialists and people who, I think we haven't really hit on the Brits in general today, but the Brits in general today did pretty well. And this is a surface they grew up on, so I think there is definitely, you're right with the reps. This is only his second full season, so he needs time.
Takes a lot of nuance, as Paul Annacone said, and you'll get that with time and repetition. Other things today as we wrap up day 1, the old guard, Stan Wawrinka and Gael Monfils winning matches. We got to see that. Some other matches, maybe other matches you had your eye on, and things on the men's side that you saw that you were intrigued or surprised by.
Nicholas Jarry hasn't been having a good time. He lost today to Denis Shapovalov, and it's nice to see Denis start to play, but it was a 3-set, straight set loss. And I think after the French Open, Jarry has kind of not gotten back. So that was a surprising match for me on the men's side for sure. What else? There were so many matches today, hard to keep up sometimes.
I got to add Grigor to the list. We're talking younger old guard, but still another for him in the first round.
Yeah, no, that was great. And he does love this surface. I don't know, there's something about Wimbledon and Grigor, it just goes, and I don't know if that's the sort of baby fed thing happening, but really nice win for him to start. Nice way to start the tournament for him.
Well, baby fed that run to the semis 10 years ago. It's crazy how fast time flies. And he's another one. We're looking at, favorites and odds, and it's the big 2 with Alcaraz Sinner and then Djokovic. But why can't Dimitrov do some real damage here, because he knows the surface? Well, we're going to end this podcast. It's been a blast talking about matches we like tomorrow and beyond, maybe some stuff we like for Wednesday that's already set up. Some day 2 matches. First, on the men's side, I wanted to mention Korda versus Mapeshi Pericard, who steps in as the lucky loser. I don't think Korda was exactly thrilled to see that happen. Mapeshi Pericard is maybe the most athletic genetic freak that's come onto tennis in a while. So that's a fun match, as is Arthur Fils and Stricker. But you can comment on those matches or any other ones you like from the men's side.
I mean, Mapeshi Pericard is one of the I think he was a third lucky loser that came into the draw. And yeah, Korda, I don't know how Korda feels about that. That definitely wasn't on the cards. And I think just for people to understand, Pesci Karipard, he's like 6'8", if I'm correct. He's 6'8" and just runs around the court like he's 6 foot tall or less. Like, it's actually a marvel to see him, especially when he goes to the net to shake players' hands. You're just like, how is it possible that he's playing tennis? So that's definitely one I'm going to stop everything I'm doing to watch, just to see how it goes. What else there? Danielle Collins is coming back. We haven't seen her play in a while, so very interested to see her. She pulled Clara Toussaint, who can be tricky, so not the easiest draw there for sure. And Jack Draper, he's coming in as, I think, the big British hope, if I could say that. So it'll be interesting to see how he opens up his Wimbledon campaign.
Yeah. One of the matches with the most variance in terms of unpredictability and then what it can mean for the draw, I'm going to be glued to Felix versus Kakanakis, because I feel like Felix can lose that match, but I also feel like if he wins, he could go all the way to the quarterfinal because he's got a section Demonar Hubie, but we're expecting Felix to get back, but he's going to have his hands full early with someone that grew up playing some grass court tennis. And then how could I not mention Ajla Tomljanovic and Ostapenko? I mean, how could you not mention it?
That is vintage. That's for the fans. That's when the draw hits for the fans. It's nice. I mean, they have played since that event. I think that was like 2021 Wimbledon, where they had their little spat. They have played since, but this is the first time back again for them at Wimbledon. So should be interesting. See if they've buried the hatchet fully or not.
There's water, and I agree. I mean, there is water under the bridge. I do think we make, as fans, we make too much of some of these dust-ups. I think people move on. We saw a better documentary with Djokovic. I think people eventually move on. I also think from the tennis side, Ostapenko, we know anything's possible with her in terms of losing to anybody, but no Azarenka around anymore, who's had her number. Iga doesn't like playing her. I say watch out. Watch out for match one on to see either way how it goes. But if she survives this and gets some momentum, she could be one of the contenders.
And on the flip side, Ajla has great record on grass. So just like Ostapenko can just sort of lose in the first round, Ajla, this might be her moment, her comeback moment. It's fun already. Now I'm getting excited.
Well, no, I appreciate this podcast for you coming on at Anastasia Folorunso. Where else can we find you? What else can we find on the Ground Pass Pod and beyond yourself and Nick Carter? And what do you got going on in the next couple weeks, couple months in tennis?
Well, we're gonna do a few extra podcasts this 2 weeks of Wimbledon. So find us there on Ground Pass. We're everywhere on social media where you can find us. And can't wait for the tour to come back stateside. We can go see some tournaments in person.
Well, this was a blast. As I said, one of the brightest people in tennis media, tennis Twitter. Follow her on all platforms. Listen to the Ground Pass podcast. And just a pleasure we were able to do this. Hope it was a fun experience. Definitely appreciate not just your support for the show, but support for the game as well. So, Anastasia Folorunso, thank you for joining Tennis Channel Inside In.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. Must do it again.